Hello and welcome to Pixel Magic Tutorials. I am your host, Geekman, and today we're going to learn how to create a retro laundromat text look and feel in Photoshop. Now, a couple of assumptions that I'm making right off the bat. Number one, I am using Photoshop CC 2017, so if you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, some of the effects may not work as expected. Second, I am using Windows, so when I say hit the Control key on the keyboard, that means hit the Command key if you're using a Mac, and when I say hit the Alt key on the keyboard, if you're using a Mac, that means hit the Option key. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started by hitting Control N on the keyboard to bring up the new image dialog box. Okay, and we're going to name this Laundromat text effect because that's what we're making. Now, this effect is not exactly a laundromat text effect. It's just a local laundromat has this type of effect as their signage, and I happen to like it, especially on an ugly-looking, old, retro, worn and faded wallpaper. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do the wallpaper first, and then we're going to do the actual text. It's all pretty simple, so just follow along. Our width is going to be 3,840 pixels. Height is 2,160 pixels. Resolution 150 pixels per inch. RGB color 8-bit. The background contents, we're going to change this color right here. Just by clicking on the little color icon there. And then we're going to change the color to a very ugly retro looking orange color. Now that color is going to be EAA, what have I got here, 877. Okay, this kind of peachy, orangey kind of color. And that's going to be our background color. Okay, color profile is the same that I always use, which is Adobe RGB 1998, square pixels, hit create, and we are now ready to begin with our ugly, peachy, orange background. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to unlock our background layer here by clicking on the little lock icon you can see here in the layers palette. Then we're going to rename this as wallpaper, just so that we can keep track of what it is that we're working on. And all that we're going to do here is we're going to add on a pattern overlay to this. Okay, so we're going to go down to our layer styles, and we're going to go to pattern overlay. And the pattern overlay that we're looking for is going to be as follows. Our blend mode is going to be lighten. Our the opacity here is going to be only 20%. The pattern that we're looking for is a pattern that can be found way down over here under Web Patterns. Now, if you don't see it, all you have to do is click on this little arrow next to the pattern. Then on the sprocket over here, and next to all your patterns, go down to Web Patterns, click on that, hit OK, and then scroll to the very bottom. And the second to last one, which looks kind of weird, is actually called Diamonds. We're going to click on that, and that will be the background effect that we're looking for, the pattern. So the scale that we're looking for here is going to be at 300%. 300% like so. Link with layer is checked, and that's really all that we need there. Hit OK. We now have the beginnings of our background. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make this look a little older and a little more worn by giving it a cloud layer on top and then blurring that and then setting that to some special effects to make it look a little bit worn and faded. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a new layer. We're going to then name this layer Clouds. Okay, just to keep track of it, of course. And what we're going to do is we're going to go make sure that our foreground and background here are black and white. So we're going to hit D on the keyboard, or we're going to click on the little black and white icon over here, and that will change our foreground and background to their default black and white. Once you have that, we're going to go up here to Filter, then we're going to go down here to Render, and then Clouds. Okay, and we now have clouds in black and white on our background. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add some motion blur to these clouds in a vertical orientation, so it'll be at 90 degrees straight up and down. So we're going to go up here to Filter. We're going to go to Blur. Oh, where are you? There. And then Motion Blur. And we're going to make this angle of 90 degrees. Distance is going to be 450 pixels. Okay, and as you can see, that really does blur it out. Then what we're going to do is we're going to change our clouds layer mode to color burn right here. Okay, and then we're going to change our opacity here to only 45%. And you now have a dirty looking, grungy kind of wallpapery looking background. Okay, it looks a little faded. Then, in order to make this look even more faded and a little bit more interesting, we're going to give this a slight vignette. Now, the way that I like to do vignettes is a little different than what you might have seen elsewhere. I like to leave my vignettes as an editable facet of the background. And the way that I do that is I go down here to my adjustments, and I put in a new curve adjustment right here above my background. Then I'm going to grab this right-hand line right here at the very top, and we're going to bring it down to the very bottom black line, which you can see right here. Okay, and that darkens everything. Then we're going to go up here where you see these two little icons next to the word curves under properties. Now, if you don't see properties, if you're not seeing this, all you have to do is go up here to window and go down to properties, and it will pop up. Once you've done that, you can then double click right here on your curves layer, and then you can go and play around with these effects. Okay, and like I said, we're going to bring this down. Then we're going to go over here to our masks portion of the curve, and we're going to select the mask on the curves, and then where it says feather, we're then going to change our feather to 175 pixels. Okay, and what that does is anything that we draw now on the mask for our curves adjustment layer will be feathered by 175 pixels all around the outline of whatever it is that you do. Now, the easiest way for you to understand that is if I select the mask here, and then I go over to my marquee, my elliptical marquee, and you can go there by hitting M on the keyboard like so, or you can click on the little icon here and then scroll on the pop-out menu to elliptical marquee tool. Okay, make sure that it is set over here on new selection. Feather is going to be 0 because the feathering will be taken care of in the mask itself. Anti-alias is checked, style is normal. Okay, and then you just want to draw a nice big oval, something around this size, doesn't really matter, just big enough to encompass the text that you're going to be putting on here later. And then you just move it until it hits the center like so. You'll see the guidelines pop up, and it will make a big cross in the middle when it is centered. Let go, and then you need to fill this selection with black. Now, black is our foreground, so you just hit Alt and Backspace, and you fill with black. Then you can hit Control and D to deselect, and you now have a vignette, but it's a very, very strong vignette, which is not exactly what we want. So we want to go over here to our curves opacity here, and we want to change that opacity to 35%. And you now have a nice faded looking vignette, which will highlight our text, which will be right here in the center. The next thing that we're going to do now that we're all done with our background is we're going to put in our text. And the text is very, very easy. Now, I happen to be using a font where I will leave a link in the description below where you can download this specific font because I think it looks pretty cool and it's very close to the font used in my local laundromat. But if you want to use a different font, feel free. This works with just about any font that you might imagine. So the font that I'm using is called Orion Radial Font. So let's get to our text tool by hitting T on the keyboard, or by you hit T on the keyboard, or by going over here to the text tool right down here, and then you have your text tool ready to go. Now the font that I'm using, like I said, is Orion Radial. Okay, the size that I'm going to be using for this is going to be 365 points. Nothing else really matters. The color doesn't matter. We're going to be changing that in the layer style. And I happen to be using the all caps button here because I like to have my text as all caps. But if you don't want that, just make sure that all of this is off. Okay, once you're ready to begin, just go to the center. Make sure that you are on centered here and sharp. And then just click and write what you want. I'm going to do pixel and then a new line. That's enter, and then magic to do my pixel magic. Now, you can see that it's overlapping each other, which is not what we want. So make sure that you are on your text layer. Go up to character. If you don't see that, go to window, go to character, click on that, and it will show up. And once it shows up, what you want to do is go over here. This is your spacing in between your lines, and you just want to make that on auto, and you get this giant space. Or if you don't like that, just bring it back to, if we're at 365, make it about 255-ish, or maybe a little bit bigger. Let's make it 300-ish. That looks good. It doesn't really matter. Whatever looks good to your eye is all that you need there. Okay, let's make it 310. I'll just type in 310 and we'll just go with that. There we go. All right, so now that we have our text in, all we have to do is let's move this to the center so that it is nicely centered like so. And then all we have to do is add in 4 pieces of layer style, and we will then have a finished effect. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go down here to our layer styles, and the first one that we're going to do is going to be a stroke. Now the stroke that we're putting in here, there's no real good place for me to put this, so I'll just leave it up here for now. The stroke that we're looking for here is going to be a size of 15. Position is outside. Blend mode is going to be normal. Opacity is 75%. Nope. Opacity is, yes, 75%. Overprint is off. Fill type is going to be color, and the color that we're looking for is going to be pure white. That's all Fs, or the upper left-hand corner of the color picker. Next thing that we're going to do is a color overlay. Like I said, the color of your text doesn't matter because we're going to change it now with our color overlay to this nice kind of blue color. Blend mode is going to be normal. It's going to be 100%, and the color that we're using is 618491. Okay, then we are going to do 2 drop shadows, and that really will complete the effect for the most part. So the first drop shadow, and if you don't see 2, just click on the little plus icon and you will then have 2. The first drop shadow, we're going to make the blend mode of normal. The color that we're using here is a rich purple, which is 6000B2. Okay, the opacity is going to be at 50%. Angle is 135. Use global light. We never use it. Always uncheck that. Distance is going to be 30. Spread is 15. Size is going to be 30. And the contour is linear, which is our default contour. Anti-alias is going to be unchecked. Noise is 0. Layer knocks out drop shadow is checked. Then we're going to do our second drop shadow, and we're going to make this blend mode of dissolve. The color that we're using is a very light yellowish, which is FFF99D. Okay, the opacity is going to be 50%. Angle is going to be -50 because we want it on the upper left-hand side of our text. Use global light again is unchecked. Distance is 28. Spread 0. Size 10. Contour is linear. Anti-alias is unchecked. Noise is 0. Layer knocks out drop shadow is checked. Okay, that's all that we need there. Then all that we have to do now to finish the effect and make it look like it's faded onto this wallpaper is we're going to set our text layer mode to dissolve. So we're going to go up here from normal. We're going to make it dissolve. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change our opacity here to only 80%. And we now have our faded looking retro laundromat text effect in Photoshop on a faded, grungy looking wallpaper background. So there you have it. A very simple, quick, and easy way to create a retro feeling laundromat text effect in Photoshop. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe. I do new tutorials every Tuesday. And once again, this is Geekman signing off for Pixel Magic Tutorials.